everybody, and thank you for choosing to spend some time with me here again in another video. It has been a while, I apologize. Basically, it has been too hot. We got this crazy heat wave where I live, and I think I've mentioned this before, but when I record, I have to turn off the air conditioner and all that sort of stuff, and it was too damn hot. It was legitimately too hot to record. Even now with the light, I might actually just turn that down because, yeah, even that is too bright and making me a little too warm. So you can see the lovely shininess on my face. So that's been the reason for the sort of prolonged radio silence is it's just been genuinely just too hot to record anything. And you can see the background moving behind me. There is a slight breeze today. Officially, we are out of the heat wave, so we're going to do a quicker story so that I don't end up sweating into a puddle here on my computer chair, because that would suck. So how has your summer been? Mine's been hot. It's been hot, and of course with the pandemic still, I mean, it's better than it was, but sort of the second semi-disappointing summer, I guess you could call it. So I hope your summers have been as good as they can be under the circumstances. Is there anything else new? I don't think so. Not that I can think of off the top of my head, nothing that you guys would be interested in. Just starting to gear up for spooky season, which, as I'm sure you can guess, is my favorite time of year. I've started a project making a creepy little dollhouse that maybe I will post a little bit about, either here or on my Insta when it's finished. So it's something for me to put on my to-do list, I suppose. So yeah, it's still kind of hot, not near as bad, but beyond that, not much new. So on to our purpose for being here together today is another short, scary story. I'm just going to do some moving around of the stuff on the monitors. Ooh, man. That background's starting to look pretty ratty. Might have to look into getting a new one. That's starting to look a little, yeah, that's definitely seen better days. So that's also a project for later. So today I have for you a short story by Anatole, France, called The Mass of Shadows. It's a little shorter, which is, as I said, that was on purpose because it's still kind of hot. Anatole France was French, very conveniently, from his last name. A poet, journalist, and novelist. He was really a big deal in his day. He actually won a Nobel Prize in Literature in 1921. He was like the iconic man of letters in his country in his day. So that is really, really cool. I always think stuff like that, at least I think it's interesting to sort of know what the backgrounds of these authors are. Because sometimes it's people here like Monsieur France who sound like they were very, quite fancy. And then sometimes it's people who are sort of self-educated or at least self-directed in their education. I just find that interesting. But The Mass of Shadows is one of Anatole France's short stories, short ghost stories. As you might be able to guess, although I am reading an English translation, there is going to be some French in this. Now, it has been many, many years since I have had to speak French on a regular basis, so I will do my best, but I do apologize in advance for, I'm sure, the mispronunciations that I am about to commit. And the usual readings. There are sometimes things in these older stories, and this one, I'm not sure if this one is Victorian or after the turn of that century. I'm not sure, but it is definitely an antique story, and as such, stories written in that time period, there's things about race, gender, orientation, background, social class that are quite rightly disagreeable to modern people, but I'm not going to censor that out of the stories because I don't really believe that that really solves anything. I think it's good to have conversations about these sorts of issues in the past, but again, if that is distasteful to you, this might not be the content for you. And our other warning, as always, is of course, ghost stories tend to center around tragic circumstances, murders and deaths and suicides and all kinds of unpleasant, macabre things, which I am well aware, not everybody's cup of tea. So again, if that's not your thing, feel free to choose another video to watch this afternoon. And now that I think that is everything, we will get into The Mass of Shadows by Anatole, France. And I'm just going to have some water right away. I mean, it's sparkling water because I like to feel fancy, of course, but for sure. Just stay hydrated. It's still hot. Stay hydrated. At least it probably is if you're watching this video when it first comes out. This tale, the sacristan, I'm going to say sacristan, I don't know, sacristan, we'll go with that, of the Church of Saint Eulalie at Nouvelle-Dumont told me as we sat under the arbor of the White House one fine summer evening, drinking a bottle of old wine to the health of the dead man, now very much at his ease, whom that very morning he had borne to the grave with full honors, beneath a pall powdered with smart silver tears. My poor father, who is dead, it is the sacristan who is speaking, was in his lifetime a gravedigger. He was of an agreeable disposition, the result, no doubt, of the calling that he followed, for it has often been pointed out that people who work in cemeteries are of a jovial turn. I don't know if that stereotype exists in the modern day. But the only people I have a personal experience with who work in the death industry, and it's not even personal, is I'm obviously, as again, you could probably guess, I'm a big fan of Caitlin Doughty, and she seems pretty cool. But if you work or know somebody who works in the funeral or death-related industry, comment below. Are you jovial? Let's look into that. Death has no terrors for them. They never give it a thought. I, for instance, monsieur, enter a cemetery at night as little perturbed as though it were the arbor of the White House. And if by chance I meet with a ghost, I don't disturb myself in the least about it, for I reflect that he may just as likely have business of his own to attend to as I. That's actually, that's really respectful. If you meet a ghost, be like this guy. Don't disturb the ghost. Let him get on with whatever he's doing. He or she, they, whichever. You might not know how they identify. I know the habits of the dead, and I know their character. Indeed, so far as that goes, I know things of which the priests themselves are ignorant. Wouldn't be hard, let's be honest. If I were to tell you all I have seen, you would be astounded. But a still tongue makes a wise head. That's actually a really good. I'll have to add that one to my repertoire. And my father, who, all the same, delighted in spinning a yarn, did not disclose a 20th part of what he knew. To make up for this, he often repeated the same stories, and to my knowledge, he told the story of Catherine Fontaine at least 100 times. Catherine Fontaine was an old maid, whom he well remembered having seen when he was a mere child. I should not be surprised if there were still, perhaps, 3 old fellows in the district who could remember having heard folks speak of her, for she was very well known and of excellent reputation, though poor enough. She lived at the corner of the Rue aux Nuns, in the turret which is still to be seen there, and which formed part of an old half-ruined mansion, looking on to the garden of the Ursuline nuns. On that turret can still be traced certain figures and half-obliterated inscriptions. The late curé of Saint Eulalie, Monsieur Levasseur, asserted that there are the words in Latin, "Love is stronger than death," which is to be understood, so he would add, of divine love. I like that the priest felt the need to spin his own interpretation of essentially some graffiti. Catherine Fontaine lived by herself in this tiny apartment. She was a lace maker. You know, of course, that the lace made in our part of the world was formerly held in high esteem. I think it's really hard. I think lace making by hand is actually really hard. No one knew anything of her relatives or friends. It was reported that when she was 18 years of age, she had loved the young Chevalier, give me a second here, the young Chevalier d'Aumont Cléry, and had been secretly affianced to him. But decent folk didn't believe a word of it, and said it was nothing but a tale concocted because Catherine Fontaine's demeanor was that of a lady rather than that of a working woman, and because, moreover, she possessed beneath her white locks the remains of great beauty. Yeah, I guess, well, I mean, there's a couple comments in there, like a chevalier being like a knight, pseudo-knight kind of guy, would not have been engaged to a working class woman. But like, I don't know. I don't like that. And I mean, it probably wouldn't have been a thing, but I don't like the classism and the kind of judgment there. But again, that's just me. Her expression was sorrowful, and on one finger she wore one of those rings fashioned by the goldsmith into the semblance of two tiny hands clasped together. In former days, folks were accustomed to exchange such rings at their betrothal ceremony. I am sure you know the sort of thing that I mean. I do, and if you don't, you should Google it. They're actually very pretty. Some of them are quite delicate. They're really nice looking. Hiccup. Maybe? No. Catherine Fontaine lived a saintly life. She spent a great deal of time in churches, and every morning, whatever might be the weather, she went to assist at the 6 o'clock Mass at Saint Eulalie. Now one December night, whilst she was in her little chamber, she was awakened by the sound of bells, and nothing doubting that they were ringing for the first Mass, the pious woman dressed herself and came downstairs and out into the street. The night was so obscure that not even the walls of the houses were visible, and not a ray of light shone from the murky sky. And such was the silence amid this black darkness that there was not even the sound of a distant dog barking, and a feeling of aloofness from every living creature was perceptible. But Catherine Fontaine knew well every single stone she stepped on, and, as she could have found her way to the church with her eyes shut, she reached without difficulty the corner of the Rue aux Nuns and the Rue de la Paroisse, where the timbered house stands with the tree of... Is this the tree of Jesse? They might mean Jesus? Admittedly, it's been a while since my World of the Early Christians class, but I feel like there's no guy named Jesse in the Bible. There could be. Saint Jesse. Wonder what they'd be the saint of. I should look that up. Where the timbered house stands with the tree of Saint Jesse carved on one of its massive beams. When she reached this spot, she perceived that the church doors were open and that a great light was streaming out from the wax tapers. She resumed her journey, and when she had passed through the porch, she found herself in the midst of a vast congregation which entirely filled the church. But she did not recognize any of the worshippers, and was surprised to observe that all of these people were dressed in velvets and brocades, with feathers in their hats, and that they wore swords in the fashion of days gone by. Here were gentlemen who carried tall canes with gold knobs, and ladies with lace caps fastened with coronet-shaped combs. Chevaliers of the Order of Saint Louis extended their hands to these ladies, who concealed behind their fans painted faces, of which only the powdered brow and the patch at the corner of the eye were visible, so like a beauty patch, like a fake beauty spot. All of them proceeded to take their places without the slightest sound, and as they moved, neither the sound of their footsteps on the pavement nor the rustle of their garments could be heard. The lower places were filled with a crowd of young artisans in brown jackets, dimity breeches, and blue stockings, with their arms round the waists of pretty blushing girls who lowered their eyes. Near the holy water stoops peasant women in scarlet petticoats and laced bodices, sat upon the ground as immovable as domestic animals, whilst young lads, standing up behind them, stared out from wide open eyes, and twirled their hats round on their fingers, and all these sorrowful countenances seemed centered irremovably on one and the same thought, at once sweet and sorrowful. On her knees, in her accustomed place, Catherine Fontaine saw the priest advance towards the altar, preceded by two servers. She recognized neither the priest nor the clerks. The mass began. It was a silent mass, during which neither the sound of the moving lips nor the tinkle of the bell was audible. Catherine Fontaine felt that she was under the observation and influence also of her mysterious neighbor, and when, scarcely turning her head, she stole a glance at him, she recognized the young Chevalier d'Aumont-Cléry, who had once loved her, and who had been dead for 45 years. She recognized him by a small mark which he had over the left ear, and above all by the shadow which his long black eyelashes cast upon his cheeks. You'd think she'd recognize him because she knows what he looks like. Like, I feel like if I had seen my partner after like 45 years, like whether he was dead or not, if after 45 years of not seeing him, I had seen him, I would also just recognize him. Like, I wouldn't have to go by marks or like particular traits. I would just be like, that is my husband. He was dressed in his hunting clothes, scarlet with gold lace, the very clothes he wore that day when he met her at St. Leonard's Wood, begged her of a drink, and stole a kiss. He had preserved his youth and good looks. When he smiled, he still displayed magnificent teeth. Catherine said to him in an undertone, Monseigneur or Monsieur? No, Monseigneur. Yeah, Monseigneur. You who were my friend, and to whom in days gone by I gave all that a girl holds most dear, may God keep you in his grace. Oh, that he would at length inspire me with regret for the sin I committed in yielding to you. For it is a fact that, though my hair is white and I approached my end, I have not yet repented of having loved you. But dear friend and noble Seigneur, not Senor, that's Spanish. Noble Seigneur, tell me, who are these folk, habited after the antique fashion, who are here assisting at this silent mass? I mean, if you love the guy, I just hate that Christian shaming. Like, it says kiss and then like all that a girl holds dear, which would like imply her virginity. But like, if you were in love, like, I don't see why you should have to regret or repent that. That's like, well, I mean, it tallies with like Old Testament God, who was frankly a dick, but like, just let people be in love. Let people love each other. Come on. The Chevalier d'Aumont-Cléry replied in a voice feebler than a breath, but nonetheless crystal clear. Catherine, these men and women are souls from purgatory who have grieved God by sinning as we ourselves sin through love. Catherine, these men and women are souls from purgatory who have grieved God by sinning, as we ourselves sin through love of the creature, but who are not on that account cast off by God, inasmuch as their sin, like ours, was not deliberate. So you just went to purgatory and not hell because your sin wasn't deliberate. Still sounds like a dick move, God. Just saying. While separated from those whom they loved upon earth, they are purified in the cleansing fires of purgatory. Okay, fuck you. They suffer the pangs of absence, which is for them the most cruel of torments. They are so unhappy that an angel from heaven takes pity upon their love torment. By the permission of the Most High, for 1 hour in the night, he reunites each lover to loved in their parish church, where they are permitted to assist at the Mass of Shadows, hands clasped in hand. These are the facts. If it has been granted to me to see thee before thy death, Catherine, it is a boon which is bestowed by God's special permission. And Catherine Fontaine answered him, I would die gladly enough, dear, dear Lord, if I might recover the beauty that which was mine when I gave you to drink in the forest. Whilst they thus conversed under their breath, a very old canon, so like a religious monk priest guy, not like a canon as in artillery, not that kind of canon, was taking the collection and proffering to the worshippers a great copper dish, wherein they let fall, each in his turn, ancient coins which have long since ceased to pass current. Écus of 6 livres, florins, ducats and ducatoons, Jacobuses and rose nobles, and the pieces fell silently into the dish. When at length it was placed before the chevalier, he dropped into it a louis which made no more sound than had the other pieces of gold and silver. Then the old canon stopped before Catherine Fontaine, who fumbled in her pocket without being able to find a farthing. Then, being unwilling to allow the dish to pass without an offering from herself, she slipped from her finger the ring which the chevalier had given her the day before his death, and cast it into the copper bowl. As the golden ring fell, a sound like the heavy clang of a bell rang out, and on the stroke of this reverberation, the chevalier, the canon, the celebrant, the servers, the ladies, and their cavaliers, the whole assembly vanished utterly. The candles guttered out, and Catherine Fontaine was left alone in darkness. Having concluded his narrative after this fashion, the sacristan drank a long draught of wine, remained pensive for a moment, and then resumed his talk with these words. I have told you this tale exactly as my father has told it to me over and over again, and I believe that it is authentic because it agrees in all respects with what I have observed of the manners and customs peculiar to those who have passed away. I have associated a good deal with the dead ever since my childhood, and I know that they are accustomed to return to what they have loved. It is on this account that the miserly dead wander at night in the neighborhood of the treasures they conceal during their lifetime. They keep a strict watch over their gold, but the trouble they give themselves, far from being of service to them, turns to their disadvantage, and it is not a rare thing at all to come upon money buried in the ground, on digging in a place haunted by a ghost. In the same way, deceased husbands come by at night to harass their wives who have made a second matrimonial venture, and I could easily name several who have kept a better watch over their wives since death than they ever did while living. That sort of thing is blameworthy, for in all fairness, the dead have no business to stir up jealousies. Still, I do but tell you what I have observed myself. It is a matter to take into account if one marries a widow. Besides, the tale I have told you is vouched for in the manner following. The morning after that extraordinary night, Catherine Fontaine was discovered dead in her chamber, and the beetle attached to Saint Eulalie found in the copper bowl used for the collection a gold ring with 2 clasped hands. Besides, I'm not the kind of man who makes jokes. Suppose we order another bottle of wine. And that is the end of The Mass of Shadows by Anatole, France. So definitely a shorter one, pardon me. Still kind of hot. But I maintain what I said before. I don't feel like you should punish people for being in love just because they might have fooled around a little bit before anybody had a ring on it. Like, I think that's shitty. Although I do agree with, like, don't be following your stuff around after you're dead. That's probably not healthy, but like, they were in love. It's not like he was dragon hoarding gold or something. Just let people be in love. I feel like that's a valid thing. Just let people be in love. Anyway, thank you for joining me for another spooky story. Um, Lots of hiccups today. I quite like this one. I might see if I can find some more by this gentleman. But as I said, thank you for choosing to spend some time with me here today. I hope you and your loved ones are safe and well, and I hope that we are moving to better times ahead. Goodbye, everyone.